Today I'm going to do a demo on mending with embroidery floss, which is a little different than traditional mending since I'm not going to try to be hiding what I'm doing. I'm going to actually be embellishing my stitches and they'll be very visible with this bright orange embroidery floss. So I have this embroidery floss here. I have an embroidery needle, which you can see is a little bit different than a sewing needle. It has this really long opening here, whereas a sewing needle has a kind of small hole. But I'm going to be using these as pins since I don't know where my pins are. And if you have any of these lying around, they work just as good as pins. So I have those, my embroidery needle, my embroidery floss, some scissors, and I have a small piece of fabric that is big enough to fill in this big rip in my boyfriend's shirt here. So that's what I need today to get started. So I'm gonna pull from the numbered side of the embroidery floss so it doesn't get tangled and get kind of a fair amount of string and cut it. And then I always lick the end. It might be a little gross, but I think it helps get it through the needle pretty well. So I'm going to do that. And then pull them through. And then make a knot on the other end here. Like that. It's kind of a messy knot, but that's okay. Then I'm going to take my shirt and flatten it out. You could iron it if you want to, but it's not really necessary. Then I'm going to take my fabric and make sure that it's covering the hole. So I'm going from the inside, making sure that it's flat here. And then since I only have a few pins, I'm just going to work on a small section at a time. So I'm going to start over here and I'm going to keep this triangle shape. It looks kind of cool. So I'm going to bend or fold this over to make it less ragged looking and pin maybe like 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And I want to make sure I don't catch the shirt on the back side. So I'm pulling that down and I'm just going down and then back up. So it is just catching the shirt and the denim. I'm going to show you that again on the other side. So I'm folding this. Actually, I'm going to put my hand in here this time so I don't catch anything. So I'm going to go down, try not to poke my finger, and then back up like that. That's looking good. So now I'm going to take my embroidery floss and come from the bottom up on this side. So I'm going to come up, we'll say here. So now I'm getting even closer to the edge. And I'm going to be doing the satin stitch today, which basically just means that all my stitches are sitting next to each other. It's just a simple up down, pretty basic. So I'm going to come down now here. And I might show you some different things. So first I'm going to make just a section of satin stitch. So I'm going up right next to where I had my last stitch. Pulling up and then pushing down next to my previous stitch. So that satin stitch where they're really close together. I'm going to do a few more just so you can get a look at that. There's a bunch of cat hair in my yarn or in my embroidery floss, but that happens. And if your stitch is a little tight, like I just made it, you can bring your needle back in and kind of loosen it a little bit. And mine are actually decreasing a little bit in size, so this is perfect because I wanted to show you, you can kind of make shapes too. I wanted to make a triangle. Because I'm doing a triangle, I'm making my next stitch a little shorter than the previous one. So I'm gonna put that just a little further down. So it kind of starts to slant downwards. And if this happens, you're like, oh, I caught my thread. All you have to do is kind of follow where that thread was. So because it was coming up through this loop, I'm now bringing it down so I can make that get uncaught. So I'm going to go up again. I'm using really thick fabric, so you can see my needles getting stuck. Sometimes I'll use needle nose pliers to save my hands and then pull it up that way. And then I always forget to like straighten my stuff out when it gets all bunched like that. But I'm almost done with my triangle at this point. You can see it's getting smaller every time. And if you catch these shreds, just pull them back out. And like I said before, if things get a little tight, you can just kind of wiggle them a little bit like that and kind of fluff them out. I'm going to do one more. Get my pliers. Okay, and now I have a triangle right there. So the next thing I'm going to do is just do some straight lines. I kind of want like a pattern going. So this is actually going to be even easier. I'm just going to go next to this triangle and just make some diagonal lines that are in line with the triangle. And then I might even do some like diagonal lines maybe. This is what's fun about this, is you can really do whatever you want. If the goal is just to not have a big rip, you can do whatever and kind of embellish however you want. So I am doing another diagonal, but this time I'm going to come up here for this zigzag thing. So I'm coming up where my last diagonal started. That's right here. But I'm gonna make kind of like a V now. So I'm gonna go in right there where my diagonal was on the other side. So it makes like a V, kind of like that. And now I'm gonna come up right in this last stitch. But because I went down over there, it's not actually coming up, which is great. So I'm gonna go down. And then I'm gonna come up here. So I'm kind of making this like zigzag zipper situation. So yeah, I'm gonna keep going, and when we come back, I'll show you what to do at the end. Now that you've gone all the way around with the design that you wanted for the mending, you're gonna need to tie off, and I'm gonna show tying off in two different ways. One, if you use just one piece of string, you're gonna need to do this, but if you are in the middle of something and need to get more embroidery floss, I'm gonna show you how to knot that and add some new floss as well. So at this point, I'm at the end of my project, so I'm just going to knot it here. So I'm turning this over, and I'm just going to take my yarn underneath. I'll go a little slower. So I'm just making a big loop, putting my yarn underneath this part of the loop and pulling. And then I'm pulling to almost the end, and then I'm going to put my finger on this loop right here to kind of hold that knot in place as I continue to pull. And there's my knot. So I'm just going to take this piece of scrap fabric to show you what might happen if I need to actually add more string. So for this demo, I've made a few stitches, but I want to start my next piece of thread just for demonstration purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the new thread and tie it onto the old one. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm basically, just like you tie your shoes, I'm tying a knot here. So I'm working with the new piece of yarn, of thread, and I'm tying it to the old one. So as I pull, this knot's going to get tighter. I'm pulling both threads. So now I have the new one attached, the new long one attached to my old short one. So it's really important you don't cut off your new thread because you'll have to do this all over again. But I'm going to cut my old thread, which is the short one, take the needle off of it, and now I'm going to thread the needle on that new piece of thread. So once my new piece of thread is good to go, I can just start and pick up from where I left off with now the new piece of thread that's nice and long. So once you're done, you're good to go, and you can wear your newly mended garment.